So today on the panel we have Luca Allam, who is the Group Director and Head of Digital at PhD.
Hi.
We have Ziad Ghorayeb, who is the Group Director of Digital UAE at Initiative.
Hello.
We have Michel, Nederlof, CEO of Aegis MENA. And James Kaye, Head of Direct Response, MEC.
Hello.
So the title of today's panel, which when I received it, I was started to make me think a little bit. Who is king? It's an interesting panel, and when I received the description of it, it started to open up a lot of different ideas in my mind, and the discussion could go into many different ways. But what we'll focus on today, and very importantly, this is a sort of the theme that we're going to work with, is really very much about the consumer. In today's world, over the last 5 to 10 years, with the emergence of new technologies, and with the emergence of digital media and mobile, and the internet and social media, people's behaviors are changing. Old models are being replaced by new models, not just in the way agencies and brands work, but in the way consumers are interacting with these brands. So in the context of this change of behavior, who is leading that relationship? Who is the king in that relationship? Everyone knows the tagline, content is king, in the old days. Is that still the case? Is the consumer king? You know, everyone will say, yes, the consumer is king. But how do we leverage and how do we make the best out of that relationship in order to give the best experience to consumers in this new age that we're living in? So that's the general theme. And we'll try to answer those questions directly or indirectly somehow, with the aim of ultimately people after this panel should get a better idea on what are the best ways in interacting with our consumers as brands to give them the best relationship, to grow our relationships with them, and to really take media in the digital space with all the technologies that are happening into the right direction and in a proper, engaging, interactive way. So that's a small intro. And I wanted to get a feeling of the audience a little bit. Could you put your hand up if you're working on the client side of the business? Okay. And if you're working on the agency side of the business? Okay, if you're on the creative side, keep your hand up. Creative agency side. Okay, and media agency side? Okay. So we have an idea of the audience, and the first thing I'm going to ask is essentially in connection with the summary I've just given. I'm going to ask the opinion of the panelists, just so we can start right off the bat, who they believe is king. And we'll start with Michel. Michel, in this new age that we're living in, who is really driving the relationship today, and who has the influences and the different components of that relationship? Who, in your view, is the king of kings?
Yeah, you probably expect me to say it's the consumer. I think it's relevant content. We'll all watch new programs and new formats. We all share engaging content with our friends. We all post user-generated or produce user-generated content, sorry. So I think content is king. And of course the consumer is changing the way they consume content, always on, any device, two-way communication. But the relevant message or the relevant content, whoever produces that content determines how people watch, consume, and engage with that content. And that could be a paid message, or that could be an owned format, or it could be earned, meaning social PR.
Okay. Well, I agree with you, and I like the approach that everyone will consider immediately that no, is it the consumer? Yes, it is the consumer, but we definitely have a big reliance and a big emphasis on content, like Michael mentioned, proper content curation, and we can get into a bit more of that as well, particularly in the world of social media and user-generated content and the paid and owned media. So from what you're saying is that executing paid, earned versus owned, and content curation is a key driver to owning this relationship?
Yes. We need to make sure the content is engaging, and it of course needs to be relevant and targeted. And that's why digital media come in, because they are very helpful in targeting better and reducing waste and reducing frustration for consumers. Because while we are in this business together, I guess everyone works in media/communication or marketing, is that we have relevant content for the targeted audience. And if we do our job well and it's interesting content, the interaction with that content, either a paid message or any other content, will be higher, and there will be higher clicks, less frustration, because it's relevant and targeted.
Before I jump on to Luca here, I'm going to a little bit more, because it's bringing new questions to mind. You say, and you've emphasized on relevant, targeted content. What are players like you guys doing to ensure that, and in particular in the online space, and I know some of these questions might seem basic ABC, but still it's always useful to bring it top of mind. What are you doing to make sure that you are making sure that the content is relevant, targeted, and what sort of best practices are you using to achieve this relevance and targeting you're talking about?
Yeah, we believe as a group, Aegis Media, in convergence. So TV and digital will be one, digital and outdoor will be one, and print and it's all coming together. And the nice thing about these technologies is that we can do optimization. We have real-time data. We can optimize. So that allows all the agencies to have different discussions with media owners. Not only I want a bigger discount, but I don't want waste. I want to reduce my waste. I only want to talk or listen to the relevant clients or the potential clients. So our whole job is changing because of technology. We're not only buying media anymore. We're more a media partner instead of we're talking to media partners instead of to media owners or suppliers. So
can everybody hear Michael okay? If you can hear him, fine, put your hand up. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to go around. If you can hear him, fine, put your hand up.
Should we do a test for all of us, actually?
So
can you hear me? Yeah.
Test. Can we have testing. The volume?
Test.
The volume?
Now it's better, I guess. Sorry.
Is that better? Volume up? Yeah. Okay, so Luca. Hello. What is your view on who's driving the relationship? Who are the biggest influencers? What can the various influencers in this relationship do more of to make sure that we have this successful interaction and engagement between the consumer and brands in the world of media?
I'd like to take a step back. Excuse me. I'd like to take a step back if I can. The original question was, who is king? Publisher, consumer, or client? I don't think it's simplistic to say this person is king, this entity is king. What I'd like to sort of describe the sort of relationship, if you like, is more of a form of governance or government. I would like to compare, if I can, publishers to politicians, okay? Bear with me. Politicians, their job is to understand their people and to provide for their people in a simple sense. Their power is given by the democracy, by the voters. In this instance, the consumers are more like voters. They are the ones, if you like, who decide whether or not this publisher is good, this publisher is bad. They're the ones who are following the trends. They're the ones who are creating the trends. It's up to the electoral vote or the voters to decide what's in and what's not in. Politicians have the power to influence, but they are given that power by the electoral vote or the voters. The brand or the client, what role do they play? Or even the agency in that? They can become, if you like, a role of the Senate. a governing few who can steer and understand their people, but help try and influence the politicians. So the world very much becomes a bottom-up type of approach. Yes, on the face of it, publishers are dictating and controlling the content. They're the ones who, if you like, have the means in which they can create at will. But actually, it's the consumers who have put them there in the first place and can decide or make or break a politician or publisher's career.
Okay, that's definitely a tweetable one. Publishers are like politicians, which reminds me to remind you that there is a competition going on Twitter where questions will be asked related to the panel. And for those who answer it correctly, there's a prize draw to win courses in this, 1 out of 4 courses in this field. Thank you, Luca.
I follow on?
Go ahead, James.
Sorry to
Carry
jump
on.
in. No, when we talk about who's king, I'm sure anyone here that's read any kind of industry report over the last 4 months, it's the same. 2013 is the year of content marketing. Content is king. Now, when we actually look at this advent, we see marketers, we see content providers, we see advertisers trying to focus on content. But ultimately, what is the biggest threat to content marketing? And that's the content itself. Now, good quality content should be there to build an emotional response with a client, with your advertisers. It's there to break down those marketing shields that people put up to the day-to-day communication. But too often we're seeing advertisers, content providers, going with a big idea, trying to push what they want to say rather than what people want to hear. Now, digital in general, it's pushed proactivity. People are now going into niche content. People are dictating when they want to see things, what they want to see. Content may be king in terms of a facilitator, but ultimately everything has to come back to the consumer, to the customer. Everything that we produce has to fulfill their needs, what they want, when they want to see it, and on what channels.
Thank you, James. Ziad?
Okay, so basically, obviously, I agree with you that content is obviously king. If you read it in books now, if you see everything that's happening, it is actually what is being said. However, if you look at it closely, if you even have the greatest content of all, if you don't really think about the context in which you want to actually throw this content in, then your content will not actually fly. And think about it the other way around. If you think only about the context, you figure out like the right context to actually drive something, but at the same time, your content is not so desirable, then at the same time, you're not getting anywhere. So I think really here, the formula to success is having great content with the right context. And this is what should be actually as a foundation in any content marketing strategy. And when I say context, it's not just 1 or 2. Basically, throughout the day, there's multiple contexts that happen. You wake up in the morning, you grab a newspaper, you're an executive, okay? Then you're there having your breakfast, you're cooking, you're actually a cook. You're back to the office, then you're an executive again. And at night, you're a father, you're a son, you're a husband. So the key point here actually is try to find the right context and the right timing where you want to push this great content that you've developed to your consumer so that you actually get a hold of it. Basically, it's very crowded out there. People are becoming more vocal. There's a lot of things happening. So really, your content needs to stand out. And it will not stand out by itself if it doesn't really align with the right context throughout the day.
Ziad, thank you very much. And
Sorry, can I just jump in that as well?
Sure.
If I can. So following on what Ziad is saying, so it's just content is great. It's a facilitator, it's very important, we understand that. But consumers, it's not just about content now, it's an expectation. We're moving into an era of on-demand marketing, okay? And with this, there are 3 drivers of this. This is enabling this demand. Consumers, they want things that are very, very simple, okay? They want things now, and they want things personalized. This is all being driven by big data. It's being driven by HTML5, things like this, technology. But also, more importantly, it's being driven by themselves in terms of what they want to see next. People always want something new and something different. So content is just one factor of it, but it's about understanding how at every touch point as a marketer, we can be on demand. We can give consumers what they want, that's catered for them, and that's personalized for their approach. So yes, content is important. Yes, we should invest lots of content, but it's about the bigger picture of how we as brands or marketers are there throughout the entire journey. When they wake up in the morning, when they go to bed. It's not just consuming content, it's about their entire approach.
Thank you for that. I think, I totally agree with you, and I think you're hitting the nail on the head 100%. And the theme is clear, that yes, content is important, obviously. The consumer is leading the relationship, but how? They're leading it in the sense that we have to get the context right. So the theme of us talking about context is king. And I have to admit, I've stolen that tagline from somebody else. Context is king, but I truly believe it. That if you get talking to the consumer according to the way that he's behaving at a certain, or she, at a certain time of day, is critical. I'll ask a question to you guys. How many of you are looking at your tablet whilst watching TV? So that is a context that we need to be aware of. How can brands leverage that behavior? TV and tablet at the same time. So that's an example of a context. If we get that right, you can get the relationship right, and you can harness the relationship between the technology and the consumer correctly. So that's the theme that you guys are going on, and that's the direction you're talking about, which I completely agree with. Moving on from there, and within sort of, it's a good segue for the topic in terms of the behaviors of humans and how that's changed over the last period. How do you see social, and everyone talks about social, local, mobile. In the, I know these are buzzwords, and Luca's smiling, and we always hear these buzzwords, but in the context of context, Michael, where do you see social, local, and mobile, and what do brands need to consider to deliver successfully within those spaces?
On social, you first need to know who you are and who you are not. If your product or category is very important to the life of consumers, or if it's utility. So for instance, if you're a bank and you start big social IDs, but your service is lousy, when you open up on social, so first fix your service before you go into fun and engagement. So know who you are and who you're not. Be consistent. But all of us in the room, and forgive me that I deviate a little bit from the subject, let us first fix a few things. We are still spamming people with text messages in UAE, but I know in some of the other markets in MENA as well, I get completely irrelevant text messages, a few a day. There's no opt-out that's working. So let us together, and I know there's important people of Etisalat in the room who are making money on selling text, but let's, as brands and agencies, let's behave ourselves. Because technology allows us to focus and to have opt-in and protect consumers from spam. Same thing on email. We are behind other markets, and that's purely behavior and how we organize ourselves. And then we can talk mobile and location-based services, and we can talk forever. But if we don't get the basics in place, people get frustrated. Conversion rates will be lower, because normally ad spend, and that's the slide we saw just before the lunch, ad spend follows time spent. So where consumers spend time, ad spend will follow. But digital can be exponential because of we can target, we can measure, we can optimize, it makes it more relevant. So if we do a good job, all the technologies and the new possibilities, if it's QR codes or NFC or location-based services or whatever, they can only have an effect if it's a relevant experience for a client and not a frustrating one. So if we drive traffic to a website, but 40% of people access a website through their smartphone, and the format is not readable, or if we promote it and it's not in Arabic, we really need to have the basics in place, all of us. And we don't have an IAB, so we don't organize ourselves about what are the definitions, how do we measure, how do we all agree how we measure. It's not about lowering the rates, so media don't have to be afraid. It's about getting the quality up, and if the quality gets up, and first probably the international brands will start spending more money and doing better work. All right, back to your question. Social, be extremely careful. If you're a boring, excuse my language, category, don't try to be very big on social, don't expect too much. If you're not a big search category, so if people are not looking for your product or your category online, okay, you're a small search category, realize what you are. So you have to break out through the clutter through exciting content or just buying a lot of GRPs for brand awareness, right? So that's social. On local, since we don't have a lot of e-commerce in the region yet, and people like shopping and malls, only the pure players do e-commerce. Location-based services are probably connected to retail. I don't know if the rest of the panel agrees, but the technology allows us in the more mature lower Gulf markets to do LBS because everyone has a smartphone. And then your last question was social?
Mobile.
Cool. Local and mobile. Yeah, mobile is 1% of the spend. I really like the idea that instead of seeing mobile as a separate category, see it as an add-on on the other media. So how can you do, how does mobile link with TV, how does mobile link with outdoor, and how does mobile link with print? That's probably a better way to look at mobile to make sure it's integrated in your plans than have a separate mobile strategy, depending a little bit of what business area. If you're in travel, like Jumeirah Group or Expedia, you probably have a separate mobile strategy. If you're in online banking, you probably have a separate mobile strategy. But otherwise, I advise your mobile strategy to be part of your overall strategy, not only part of your digital strategy. So I really like that suggestion before the break.
So some key messages there. Number one is, and which is, I think, a tweetable one, realize what you are. Before you choose the technology, before you choose the channel, realize what you are, and then you use the right channel to deliver on that. Don't go into a technology which is unrelated to or not significant in the category you're in. And I'm very close to my heart your point on the mobile. And this is a mindset, I think, that there's a lot of media guys here. I think mobile needs to start to shift, and I know Maha is here from Salat and others, that no longer is it sort of the last line item on the media plan. If there's any budget left, throw it into mobile. Mobile needs to start, as Michael is talking about, becoming an integrated part of the thinking process from the beginning and not an afterthought. And this is really, really important. If the mindset changes in that direction, the possibilities of mobile are huge, and we can all see that. The ingredients are there, but the mindset needs to move in that direction, and it's really good news that I've personally seen in this region the mindset going in that direction more and more recently. So on the topic of mobile or local and social, Luca, would you like to add anything?
To be honest, I don't have enough time. There's all three different categories sort of command by itself, hours worth. I'll try and sum up as best I can with what I know. I work in a media agency. I deal with clients and I deal with publishers. My clients like terms like solo-mo. They love it. It's great. It's buzzwords. They hear it in the States. They hear it in Europe. They think they should do it. We have a tendency in this market to try and think that we need to catch up with the rest of the world. In actual fact, I don't think that we need to catch up with the rest of the world. I think in this market there's a lot of great stuff being produced. I think we are doing some fantastic work in social media. I think our mobile offering is fantastic, as good as anyone else. The problem we have is around education piece. And that's where obviously agency folk such as ourselves come on board to try and educate where we see fit, the fit with brands and obviously in audiences. Look, with regards to mobile, I remember when I started in media quite some time ago, it was the year of mobile. We were talking about this in the panel just before, and every year seems to be the year of mobile, and yet it never seems really to kick off. And there's reasons behind that. We cannot negate other important media. Offline in this part of the world, as we all know, is king. Digital has been an afterthought, and is at this current time still in majority an afterthought. But there are opportunities for us to change that. We have the infrastructure in place to a degree in some markets. We have the technology in place and the hunger from audiences for that. Dimitri talked already about mobile in terms of smartphone penetration. In KSA and UAE, it's the highest anywhere in the world, and that's considerable. There are seismic shifts in terms of smartphones coming into this market. We know in terms of social media, I can only speak in regards to Omnicom, we have 27 people dedicated to social media alone. The demand for social media, for brands to be social, is enormous in this part of the world, just like everywhere else. We are not, and I'll repeat, far behind the rest of the world. But that doesn't matter. But we shouldn't be concerned with things like solo mode too much. We should be concerned with what works for our brands and what works for our consumers. Less about the buzzwords, more about the work.
James, thoughts on mobile?
I completely agree.
Social?
The infrastructure's there. When it comes to the educational piece, I think it's even, and this is the same here globally, it's actually going back to basics. Why? Why am I using these channels? What do I hope to achieve from it? The traditional metrics of fan acquisition or likes, etc., fine. But ultimately, this doesn't show the true value of social media without a dedicated objective. Now, in terms of the rush to get onto social media, we forget that by entering into social media, we're losing control, or we're letting go of control of our brand. It's no longer our own. We can only guide the conversation, we cannot dictate it. Are we prepared to have other people talking about us? If it's negative, are we prepared to engage in a conversation? Now, I always believe that this kind of openness and transparency that social media brings is a fantastic advantage. Traditionally, whether it's good or bad, feedback has always been behind closed doors. Now we have an opportunity to engage with people, to change their perceptions on a very public forum, if we are prepared and if to engage with them and to talk to them rather than ignoring or deleting.
Yeah. And social media generally has taken on extra significance. We all know from the Arab Spring what happened, right? So social media is a platform where people can not just air their views on brands, but it's a lifeblood, right? It's a life force. They can talk about economic issues, political issues, religious issues. They're using social media as a platform, especially the youth, to speak to the world as their only opportunity. And with that are inherent dangers, just what's been told by the panelists. We do have to be careful with the use of it, but we need to embrace it, because actually this part of the world, social media, is what sets us apart from other regions, because the importance of social media here, as I said, it can compete, if not exceed, everywhere else in the world.
Ziad, mobile, social media, local?
Social, local, mobile. Well, obviously a few years back you think each agency or each brand would need to have a social strategy and mobile strategy and a location-based services strategy. But the way basically things are changed today is that you have to link these together and you have to think about an integrated strategy. So these things work together actually. And for a brand, basically what needs to be done is that they have to be social. That's one. Two, they have to think local. And three, obviously they have to invest on mobile, because this is the next best thing. I'm not gonna add a lot more on the importance of mobile, particularly in this part of the region. We all know this, and when it comes to the Arab Spring, like Luca had mentioned, and the social media, but we really need to make sure that we understand what kind of data we can get out of these as well. Let's say social media, for instance, don't just think about your community pages, your Twitter pages, just the things that you manage yourself. The social media sphere is humongous, it's huge. It actually provides brands with lots of insights and information. We have to go beyond actually, the simple share of voice, negative, positive sentiments, and actually try to get to the bottom line and see what actually triggers the sentiment and what are the things that people actually, are discussing. And some of them are just happening out there and we're not actually, embarking and going on the discussion. Social media, I think, is, in this part of the world, there's lack of research and data, but I think social media is where we have a huge amount of data and we really need to amplify that. It's just that, for instance, when it comes to brands, they should think about themselves about like newsrooms. I was just thinking the other day about the Project Stratos. 8 million people have just watching it at the same time on YouTube, and this is really huge. Basically, brands can break the news. This is what happened with Red Bull. Actually, it actually broke the news, and this is what's very important about social in this.
Xbox One. Anybody heard of Xbox One? Yeah? Show of hands. Heard of Xbox One. How did you hear about it? Probably through Twitter, maybe through Facebook. Newspaper. Fantastic. But I mean, that was announced on Tuesday, and it's if those who don't know, it's basically Microsoft answer to everything TV, entertainment, and gaming sort of combined into one. And I found out today just by going onto my Twitter account. I wouldn't have found out otherwise. And this was sort of what we alluded to, what Richard was talking about, and I believe in the third presentation. We're finding about news through social devices, and that's very, very important. And it's how we find out about news on social platforms and how that ties in traditional means and how we can leverage that as brands. That's where the opportunity lies.
And I think, sorry, just one important thing. I mean, everyone's discussed here, the media landscape is fragmenting. I think the challenge for us is not only engaging with people across multiple devices, multiple channels, but how do we actually attribute performance across these channels as well? How do we gauge the impact at each stage of this customer's journey? Because we've moved from seeing an ad on TV and going into a store. The journey has got a lot more convoluted and a lot more complicated. So it's actually how, as marketers and advertisers, we can actually ensure we're always getting the right balance of communication and media.
Okay, so obviously a lot of key messages there, and we're talking about brands breaking the news. We're talking about, it's not the year of mobile, but I would call it the decade of mobile. That was sort of my psychological way out of having to say every year. And the segue to what you're talking about, data. I want to talk a little bit very briefly now about data before I start to wrap up. Ziad mentioned it. Michael talked about how the experience in shopping and how mobile and other technologies and how the consumer is behaving differently in the world of shopping and retail. Data and our behaviors in the world of retail and shopping. What are your views on that, Michael?
As our heritage as a group is in media, and we now also own creative agencies, but let me focus on the media. Our whole business model is changing. The way we will talk with the media is on a real-time basis and on auction basis. And that's not only to get lower rates, but that means that if you are searching for a new car, you in a millisecond will, a few brands can bid on you as you are searching a car. So that's how we present you an ad. So at least so we target individual people, not target audiences. We know exactly today, this very second, who is searching on which website for which car. So yeah, that allows us to be so relevant. And of course then we need to keep track of that behavior. Does someone actually click on an ad or interact with a message, or maybe does that the next day or the day after? So the things we're doing already on digital today, we will start doing in other media, because those media there will be convergence due to technology of those media.
And how do we build the trust of the consumer in this world to get them to click on that button, to get them to engage when they're at the store with the phone?
That's the point. We are, as an industry, we are responsible for getting our act together. But you see that older, more mature markets are struggling with that. In Europe, you have now cookie legislation, meaning that you have, every time you go to a website, you need to allow them to track your behavior online. And so everyone is still struggling with that data issue. So that's from the privacy and protection side. The other thing is, of course, you have a lot of data, and what do you do with it? And we all know that when, I'm an old guy, so we did, in newspapers, we did contests where you could cut out a coupon and then enter a contest as a consumer, and then you were the marketing manager or the product manager, and then you get, if you were lucky, you get 5,000 or 10,000 coupons, and there was a draw, and you got a winner. And then what happened with those 5,000 or 10,000 coupons after you have selected the winner, right? We didn't put it in a database, and if you were disciplined enough to put it in a database, how did you follow up with them? So that's the issue was in the 70s and the 80s, and that's still the issue. We have a lot of data and we're not using it. So it's about consistency, one step at a time. Of course, it's nice to be bold and have dreams, but I see a lot of brands, also our clients, that are active on social, and to be honest, the only thing they do is show product data. We have a new product, and then the second thing they do is organize contests. You can win tickets or you can win a free product. it's not very engaging, to be honest. So
Okay.
everyone is still struggling with it. Although we're strong believers, I think everyone here and everyone there is strong believers of the potential of mobile or digital. But it's difficult. It's difficult. It's easier to produce TVC, and it's easier to book a TVC, and it's easier to report how many people you reached with that TVC. It's still easier. Digital is a hard job, and it's hard work, and it's very difficult.
We have to start moving on a bit quickly. Does anyone have any key points they want to talk about regarding data, privacy, and trust of the consumer? Literally 30 seconds each.
Okay, I'll go very quickly. Okay, data. Like Dimitri said, we're moving from a sort of world of madmen to mathmen, right? So publishers, agencies, we're all clamoring to get as much data as possible. It's a land grab of data. Whoever has the most data wins, but they only win if they use the data, just like Michael's saying, effectively. It all boils down to the impression and the value of the impression, okay? With all this data, if you cannot apply and get value out of this impression to the consumer at the right time, in the right place, in the right purchase mode, it's a waste of inventory, it's a waste of money. The second point I make on data is that it's all about social enablement, right? So the social graph. Companies like TripAdvisor give you a very personalized approach to booking a holiday or to finding research about a holiday because they get the data from your social networks. So Facebook is plugged into over 2 million websites. Every time you update your profile on Facebook or Twitter or whatever, this is what's feeding the data, this is what's feeding the consumer on the back end, so the publisher on the back end to provide the advertising solution. So the social graph has enabled data, and for us as agencies, it's about what is important. Just because you can count something doesn't mean it should count, right? So look at the right data, analyze it with smart guys, and apply it as effectively as possible.
James, 30 seconds.
Okay. No, exactly. I mean, everyone knows digital is data. It's essentially one big research forum. You have qualitative data through your social media, you have quantitative data through your ad servers, through search. It's really, the important thing is though, this proliferation of data means nothing unless you have the people there to actually make sense of it, to pick out what's relevant, and to use it to drive the business forward. The key balance after that, something that was mentioned earlier, getting the balance between making something personal and making something intrusive. Because again, digital people these days, they want to set, they want to demand, they want to be in control. They do not want to be stalked, they do not want to be invaded.
Thank you.
I agree with James and the guys. Obviously, it's not just about having this data in hands, it's about using this data towards changing our marketing strategies, and that's what's most important. And I believe that brands need to look at really this data in a positive way, even if basically there are things that are, the data is revealing something that is not working for the brand. This is where we have to actually take it and change things around. For instance, and the most engaged customers actually, they bring in expertise, they just give you insights, like give you valuable consumer insights so that you know what's working, what's not working within your marketing strategy. And when it comes to the ones that are mostly engaged, like your brand ambassadors, well, these are your employees who are not on the payroll. These are here to actually help you to become a better brand.
Thank you. I'm going to wrap up for 1 minute maximum, and then we'll open the floor for 2 or 3 minutes questions, Q&A. I think from the discussion, and if we go back to the original question, who is king? My conclusion on this, and maybe it's yours as well, and I'd like to hear your view, is that everyone in this ecosystem is a king in some form or other. We've got content, we've got the consumer. Without good content, it's not going to be a success story. Without listening to what the consumer wants, personalization, relevance, tapping into their behavior, tapping into the context that they're in, not being intrusive, not being disruptive, being personalized. Data. We could say data's king. Tools, insights that we get from these tools, they could be king. Technology. Is mobile king? Is web, is social media platforms, are they king? They could be king as well. Content curation and creativity. How we're using this content, how we're using these platforms and these technologies creatively to keep this consumer engaged. Is creative king in that case? Me as a creative agency, I might say yes. All of these elements, I believe, is the answer to that question as who is king. And I think together, they all constitute that and answer that question. And this is reflective of the new age that we live in that integrating of these various components in the right way is what will make you king in delivering to your consumer. And you know, there's a little quote that I read somewhere here where it says, consumers have something they have never had before. They have the power to warn and threaten rather than to punish silently after the fact. So with the technology and the social media and the interactive and the engagement we have today, we can find out early from our consumers about what we're doing right and wrong. We can use that data, we can use the context to be able to deliver as kings. And that's a little bit of a wrap-up of what we talked about today. I hope it kind of answered the question by not answering it in a way. And I put the floor to you for any Q&A.
Of the question. One is pretty much a comment that I would like to put on the table since we are in the digital media forum. And I would like really to say it out loud. Because I do believe that when it comes to the mobile advertising part of it, telcos are not given the chance to provide the services for the various advertisers and media sellers and buyers. And I'm saying that really on the context that I've been struggling for the last 1.5 years in the UAE, educating the market and educating advertisers and media sellers and brands, the importance of the mobile and the importance of the fact that it's not just a matter of us as a telco, it's not more dineros that we're going to be making or putting on the table from our part, but it's actually about the industry and us and all of us having the ability to create or increase the industry when it comes for the digital part of it, and how mobile is going to be able to give the advertisers the ability to target customer based on their behaviors rather than us just sending and spamming customers. And yet, and I'm going to really put that in a challenge right now and then, whoever actually can be able to prove me wrong, I want you to come over and start to tell me these are the bookings for my services and products and my clients for you to start to do the mobile advertising for me.
It's a great question. And in a way, since a lot of you guys are media players here, maybe we can throw to the floor and I can ask the question. Because I think that a lot of the answer to this, and it's very much in context of what we're talking about, is how to get mobile right. You know, not being spam, being relevant, being targeted, being within the context of the behaviors that you mentioned. And I think a lot of that is very much related to the mindset that we all talked about today. That we have to start as planners and buyers and creative agencies, think as mobile as part of the integrated overall plan from the start, and not as the afterthought, and not as the, if there's some budget left, we'll do mobile. And if that is the case, the mindset going in that direction of having integrated thought process from the start with the other media, then I think we're a good step in that direction. So the question would be back to the media players here. And if you could raise your hand. Who here has started to consider mobile as part of the integrated thought process of their planning from the beginning of the planning process when they get their briefs from their various clients? Who takes mobile from the start and thinks about it along with the TV and with the newspaper and with the radio and with the online? Who takes that as part of the beginning of the process? So we've got 1, 2 out of 3 to consider these new technologies from the beginning as part of the process initially. As part of the thinking process, that mindset will start to deliver on the quality needed for, and the technologies and the platforms are there. Rich media on mobile is coming out. Targeting is available from the operators like Salat and others. So it's about the mindset. Would anybody like to add to that?
Karim, with all due respect, this is not just a regional issue. This is a global issue. Every operator is trying to monetize mobile as much as they can, but they're facing inherent issues, whether that's through the infrastructure or whether it's through mobile behaviors, or whether it's through a lack of trust or faith in the platform. There are different issues, but it's not isolated. I mean, I spent enough time in Europe with clients who were trying to figure out what to do in mobile. And what they would do is they'd dip their toe in every now and again. Some would try Bluetooth, some would try SMS, some would try rich media. Some would try and release exclusive video content on mobile first before on mainstream desktop. So I wouldn't try and, I don't have the answers for you, and I don't think many people do, because this goes back to what I was saying before. 10 years ago, I was hearing it's the era of mobile, but yet, in terms of investment-wise, we're nowhere near that. But in a grander scheme of things, we're nowhere near that in overall digital. I mean, we're looking at 6-7% of total investments in digital. Forget mobile, digital, right? So we're a long way behind in terms of investment as a total spectrum rather than just within a specific platform.
I'm a little bit more positive. Yes, we need to start with mobile, especially in the media agencies and the brands. So in the creative agencies, I think some of the creative agencies start with mobile when they do campaigns and creative concepts. But your competition or telcos everywhere in the region, everywhere in the world struggle, so it's not a regional issue, I agree. But you compete with likes of Google, or in this region, Maktub. They have sales forces. Google does a lot of work on research. What is TV plus online video, and what's the impact? And how much is a fair share on video? So they are after brand money. So what you see is that some of the digital players, let's say a telco is a digital player or a mobile player, they go for conversion only. You see now that Google is going for brand money. They're going after TV budgets. You see that Yahoo says we need to help clients and agencies to create exclusive content. So they have a really creative department in Maktub helping brands to come up with exclusive or branded content. So telcos, to my knowledge, and that's not criticism, but they don't have the sales forces yet because they outsource their inventory to Ring Ring or AdMob or anyone. So your contact with the brands and is very limited. I'm not sure how big the teams are in doing it this a lot or in Mobile or whatever, but not to the extent that the agencies and some of your competitors have. So, and then the research. The openness on data, I would love to have access to test a lot and do data, but it's not always easy to get that. So one of our businesses is an out-of-home business, the digital ecosystem out of home. And the interaction with mobile, like the speaker says, okay, your mobile is a remote control when it comes to outdoor. We can measure outdoor. All of us together, we can measure outdoor and interactivity with outdoor because we have the GPS. We know where people are. We know how many people see a site or at least have the potential to see a location. And we know if they actually interact with that location. So outdoor is a huge business. 30% of all money in the region goes to outdoor. And we don't measure outdoor at all. Telcos and us, we could play a real big role in tapping onto outdoor or print or TV.
We're not getting the attention. And when we look into mobile, to be honest, and I'm not sure exactly why, but it's been always display ads. There is other forms of mobile services and way of reaching to the customer other than display ads, and I'm not really sure why we're focused into that. And yet, if you want to look into the fact that we are competing with Maktub and so on, no, we're not. It could be an extension to Maktub.
I know.
It could be a very beautiful natural extension. But again, are they willing to give us that break?
Okay.
This is where...
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
The infrastructure on mobile, right, whether it's bandwidth or something else, that's fine. The UAE, we're a bit more developed. So just within the UAE, do you know what percentage of clients actually have a mobile web page? Do you know?
Less than 10%.
It's single digits in terms of clients who have a dedicated mobile web page. If brands of clients aren't investing in mobile themselves, it's so difficult for us as an agency to drive the agenda on mobile. This is why we were talking before about the education piece.
So I think because we have to end it there, we leave it on a note of we all know the importance of mobile. We all need to try to focus on that, work more on that, work on our mindsets on that. And of course, we can take the debate offline for any more details or questions you guys have. I hope you enjoyed the panel. Thank you very much.